Hello, everyone. We have a wonderful guest with us today. We are so excited to welcome Ashley Probst. Ashley is an eclectic witch and tarot reader based in Lahaina, Maui. You can find her on TikTok spreading witchy tips and magic, and she also offers channeled tarot readings with clients. Ashley's family was also directly impacted and affected by the Maui fires in August, and there will be links with ways you can support in the show notes of this episode. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today, and we are so thrilled to take a look at your chart.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you too.
Yay! So you are a witch, you know the basics of astrology, and I will go ahead and share my screen and show you what we are looking at, but you're pretty much familiar with what a birth chart looks like, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Ashley is a Leo rising, Pisces sun, and a moon in Gemini. So those are your big three. And you have quite a magical chart. I think there's a lot of nods to the esoteric, the occult, intuition, connection with deep psychic abilities. And you also have a lot of planets that are angular. And when planets are angular, they're in the first, 10th, fourth, and seventh houses. And those kind of gain strength when they're in those positions. So there's a lot of support and extra magic kind of available to you there. So that was something that stood out right away when I looked at your chart. And yeah, Laura, what do you think? What were some of your first impressions?
Yeah, when I looked at your chart and Stephanie and I were, doing a little debrief, I said, wow, this woman is is meant to be a healer of some kind, somebody who maybe later on in life is fully coming out as a mystical occult leader. We'll get to your Saturn return in the transit portion of it, but I think that's one of the biggest topics for your Saturn return is putting in the work and the discipline and perseverance to see it through. I think that you have a lot of fierceness as well in your chart with Mars in the first house in retrograde. And I think Stephanie can speak to Mars in Leo in the first house because she has that placement as well. But yeah, I think you're meant to be who you are in this lifetime. You're meant to be this mystical, magical creator and not allow anybody's opinions to deter you from that path.
I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, I think something else that I thought was really adorable in your chart is that you were born under a first quarter moon. So that is going to be the next phase right after a new moon when you plant seeds. And the first quarter moon is the time where we are taking action. So when it comes to doing your spell work, calling in manifestations, you could get like a little extra boost to do it under that moon phase. But this makes for someone who is a go-getter, who is, up for taking risks. You have a lot of risk-taking aspects here. You have Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius. That is Jupiter's favorite sign out of all of the zodiac signs to be in. Jupiter is the planet of luck and expansion, and also spirituality and wisdom. And when you have a planet that's already strengthened by being in a sign that it loves, this can create even the ability to act on our intuition, to have this relentless faith in ourselves and our desires and our goals, and to chase after them fearlessly.
There's a pattern in your chart that speak to going viral on social media and being a huge social media presence. You have your midheaven ruled by Venus, and Venus is in the sign of Aquarius. So you could definitely benefit from doing partnerships with people that you meet on social media. Most of our lives are on social media, the way we do work, the way that we promote ourselves. And Venus also rules your third house of social media, of writing, of communicating. So there's like little like signifiers in your chart that you are meant to be a big presence. Oh, I forgot about your Gemini moon in the 11th house. The 11th house is community, friendships. But that's in like modern times, it's where we find our fans. And Gemini is this like very communicative, very like social sign. You have your moon there, and your moon represents your like your deep instinctual need. And your moon is ruled by Mercury, which is also in your 7th house in the sign of Aquarius. So again, another good thing to keep in mind is maybe doing partnerships with different people that you meet on the internet.
And I think if you have any desires to write a book or share your story, that is something that really, really stands out in your chart, because Mercury, which is the scribe, the writer, is not only angular, but it's right on top of your descendant. So if the ascendant is your rising sign, who you are, the descendant is the other, which is also collaborations, contracts, business partnerships. And with Mercury there, this just shows that a source of income, because Mercury rules your 2nd house of resources, would be through your writing and telling your story. You also have some transits that are coming up that are cosmic BFDs and really exciting and potentially expansive and have to do with Mercury. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I just think that that was something that really stood out, that if you have dreams to share your story, there are others who are going to be very receptive to it.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing that. It's actually definitely been a goal of mine since I was a kid, is to write a book. So yes.
Well, with your moon in Gemini, with your Mercury so strongly placed in your chart, with Jupiter, the planet of luck, in one of the luckiest houses in astrology. The 5th house is the house of pleasure, celebration, joy, and creativity, self-expression. Yeah, you really have a supportive chart for bringing that to life. So just keep doing what you're doing and trust that it's going to arrive in divine timing.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think really working with your Jupiter and Sagittarius, as Stephanie mentioned, the 5th house is trying to you, your ascendant. So anything that you do in terms of spirituality, traveling, exploration of self, philosophy, creativity is going to really help you gain self-confidence, because Jupiter is also the ruler of your sun and your Saturn, and you have a Saturn Sun conjunction, which I'm sure was not easy growing up, and is a master teacher. And ultimately, we'll speak more about this again during your Saturn return discussion, but this is all about perseverance for yourself and like who you are. I know it's very difficult placement for a Saturn to be, but the more you lean in to your faith and your creativity, the easier your Saturn's going to be during this time, because you have it natally in your chart. I also wanted to shout out other people who had Saturn in the 8th house, because you'll understand why this is a big deal. So Martin Luther King Jr., Jay-Z, Sigmund Freud, Michael Jordan, The Rock, Kobe Bryant, Frida Kahlo, and all of those people have something in common. They all built something over the long term of their life and found success later on in life. And I'm not saying this is going to happen in your 60s, but Saturn fully matures after the age of 30, after your Saturn return. So this might be a difficult time, but understanding your Saturn and mastering it is really going to help you even like throughout the rest of your life.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah, it's a powerful placement.
Yes. And the 8th house is the house of the occult and the unseen and, you know, the mystical curiosities in the world. So you have your chart ruler here, right? The planet that rules your rising sign is the sun. And I think what's interesting about your rising sign and your sun being in Pisces is they can't see one another. So you may feel like you have this bright, sunny, charismatic Leo side to you. And then there's other times where you might just want to like crawl in a hole and be alone and, you know, just conserve your own energy. Or other people, I call the eighth house, like when you have eighth house placements, this is like energetic sponges. Honoring your boundaries is extra important, and that is the whole point of Saturn. That's what Saturn wants us to do, is to protect our time, our energy, and our resources. So I think a big part of your Saturn return is going to be about setting boundaries and recognizing your own worth, the sun, right? Your light, the unique gifts that you have, coming into yourself and seeing yourself fully. Saturn is the planet of mastery, and it's where we become skilled professionals in our life over time. So the eighth house, like I said, is the occult. It is also, I don't know if you've ever had any call or experiences to do any like death work or birth work. But this is a lot of, I'm someone who volunteers for hospice, and I have similar signatures in my chart, but this would be someone who would do really well with helping people in these portal moments, transition. And that's like the most powerful energy that you can encounter as a human being, truly, you know, like bringing someone in or helping someone leave. So yeah, if that has ever been something that's crossed your mind, I could see that definitely, you being a authority figure in that space, and yeah, really, really making a difference.
Wow. Yeah, that is actually something I've thought about. And I've gotten past life downloads about being like having that type of occupation in a previous life. So I felt like that connection kind of, yeah, it all makes sense.
Ooh, I just got tingles on my head, and that's usually my guides like, yes, bitch, that's right.
One of the questions that I was actually going to ask you is if your ancestors or you, I guess you had past life memories, you were a healer in a past life, but maybe were unalived for it. And so in this lifetime, this is what you're trying to accomplish, is being a healer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can see that.
So something else, back to just your Leo rising and your sun being in the eighth, protecting your energy and your vitality and your light and your rays, right? Because you're the cosmic cheerleader. When you're a Leo rising, like your enthusiasm is contagious and others want a piece of your light. And when you have planets in the eighth house, you can be giving and giving and giving. So part of this karmic placement, and especially during your Saturn return, is going to be, yes, boundaries, but also recognizing who and what is worth your energetic investment, which bonds and relationships are truly deep and meaningful and reciprocal. People enter and exit our lives during our Saturn returns, and it's all very karmic. So you're at the very beginning, because Saturn is in Pisces, but it hasn't touched your Saturn exactly yet. But next year it will. So we will dive into that a little bit more. But Laura, do you have any other reflections about her birth chart before we get into kind of what's been going on and what's coming up?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, just because I have second and eighth house stuff as well, and it's super fun and super triggering, is the second and eighth houses are all about our emotional security or insecurity. And you have Chiron and Virgo in your second house opposing your Sun and Saturn. So I think your Saturn return is also going to signify like questions around money and how you make money and about financial security or insecurity, your beliefs around abundance and prosperity and how you make a living for yourself. Virgos are very self-sufficient, and it being in your second house, maybe like Stephanie was saying, like not giving everybody your energy or time, because one shadow side of Pisces is being the martyr, like self-sacrificing and then later on resenting it because no one's helping you. I think people with eighth house placements do a lot for other people, because the eighth house is other people's resources, and it's all about vulnerability and intimacy. So yeah, I think having your sun, which is your vibrance, your vitality, conjunct Saturn in the eighth house, is because this is not just some regular Saturn return, right? It's like with your sun, it's like how much energy you have. I think it's going to be a lot about remembering your value and your worth as well.
I can see that that those themes are already kind of coming up for me, I think. So like you said, tip of the iceberg.
And the sun is your chart ruler. So in astrology, the chart ruler is you. It's you, that planet. So for you as a Leo rising, it's your sun. But for other people, it can be Mars or Venus, or so that is the planet that really, really stands out. Two other quick observations that I had in your chart. Just a quick mention. So the moon is in your 11th, which is amazing for your fans, for building community, but it rules your 12th house. I also have this in my chart. When the moon rules your 12th house, wherever the moon is in your chart, there can be self-undoing. This can mean that like people in your community or friends growing up, I don't know if this was your experience, may have been like secret enemies in some way, or there could have been a lot of competition or jealousy especially with this Mars in your first house and it being retrograde. So just always tuning into your intuition and asking yourself, like, is this a mutual friendship? Like, is this person's intentions pure? Because from time to time, not all the time, but from time to time, hidden enemies can pop up in community settings or in groups of friends.
Definitely experienced that. So
okay. And then the other thing I want to say is I also have Mars and Leo in the first house, and I'm clumsy. I get hurt all the time. So yeah, I was just wondering, like, have you broken a lot of bones? Are you accident prone?
I've actually never broken a bone, but I am kind of a klutz. So it just kind of, minor things, but yeah, definitely not really known for my grace in that way.
We move quickly with that placement. Yes. Can benefit from slowing down, which I still haven't figured out how to do. Okay. So one of your questions was about the fires and kind of like everything that's been going on. We can pull up the date and look at what was going on in your chart, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay. Spoiler alert, there was so much going on in your chart this day. A lot stood out. It was almost as if every sensitive point in your chart was being activated. The first thing that stood out to me was the sun was right on top of your Mars retrograde. In astrology, when a planet is retrograde, sometimes there's more difficulties and challenges in some way, right? So the sun is shining its light and activating this planet that can already cause some issues and difficulties. Mars in your chart rules your home, your foundation. So it's going to bring in those topics. And it also rules communication, life-changing news arriving, big shifts, perspective shifts, right? So that was just a really clear, the sun is shining on those topics. The moon that day was right on top of your midheaven. The midheaven is another one of the most sensitive points in the chart. It is your reputation, your career, your legacy. The moon is our emotions, our internal self. So when it's spotlighting our midheaven, that can feel like an emotional day. It can feel like a big dramatic day. That this transit happens once a month, so it's not necessarily like the transit to look out for, but it was something that extra stood out to me. The moon was also right next to Uranus, which is the planet of shock, surprise, and sudden events.
Mm-hmm. That definitely all tracks for how things kind of played out that day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else did you see, Laura?
Well, the biggest aspect that day was the Venus square Uranus. And the fact that you said it affected your even work, right? So Venus was conjunct your ascendant, so your body, your sense of self, and Venus is the ruler of your 10th house, and the moon that was transiting that day. And Venus being square to your 10th house, it's like, in the one hand, it was disrupting your home life because all of this stuff was opposing your 4th house of home and foundation. But I don't know, for some reason, I'm getting this feeling that this is a very big career year for you because you have Jupiter transiting that 10th house. And Stephanie said that you've been going viral lately. So I just feel like, yeah, in the one hand, one area of your life's kind of like shitty right now, obviously, and devastating, and there's a grieving moment. But then in the other hand, it's your communities coming together and you're able to almost expand in some ways for your career.
Yeah, that's super interesting because the day of the fire, I was at work. And so I was like actively reporting on the information I was getting while also not having communication with my parents. So that was also why the communication aspect was interesting. But my career is definitely tied to it. And every TikTok video I've made since the fire has definitely gained a lot of traction. And especially the ones about the fire. So that yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover between all of my different worlds, which has been weird.
Yeah. Venus rules your 10th house of career, right? And it's on top of your ascendant. So it literally, one of your questions was like, how does this intersect, like this big moment in my personal life with your career? Venus is on top of who you are, your ascendant, your personal life, right? Your existence and embodiment. And it's retrograde in the sky, again, causing issues, to say the least, the biggest understatement, right? Challenges, reversals, turning points. And it is the planet that governs activities that have to do with your career too. So both of these topics were being pulled in at the same time.
Oh, and it's squaring her IC. Sorry,
yes.
I saw that.
You're exactly. So the IC is the lowest part of the chart, and it's the part of the chart that represents our foundations, our home, and our family. So to have it just so prominently hitting all of your angles, anytime a planet is going to hit one of your angles, you're going to feel its effects more intensely, right? Because they represent the moment you took your first breath. That's the most sensitive part of the birth chart. Now, you also had Mars, which in ancient astrology is the planet of war, difficulties, challenges, severing, and separation, right opposite your sun. And it's in your house of possessions, and it's opposite the house of loss and grief. And your sun is your chart ruler. So you can see how that symbolism plays out for just your actual possessions and your livelihood and your comfort and security.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
It doesn't stop there. This was a wild day. You had Pluto. Pluto is the planet of death, transformation, catharsis, crisis, but also like a phoenix moment, right? There's a total, I call Pluto like the mini death, right? Like you have these ego deaths and these wild experiences and you're at your lowest low, but you rise again. It's the planet of power. And it was right on top of your Uranus in your birth chart. Uranus is the planet of surprises. So this is like a sudden and shocking crisis that arrives. Now, just so you know, this will never happen again in your life. This is the last time Pluto is going to ever touch your Uranus. So you've been feeling, and when Pluto is like on top of your Uranus, you're going to kind of feel the impacts of this. It doesn't mean another major crazy event is going to happen, but you're going to, obviously, this is not something that just happens and you move on from. This is a longer period of processing. So Pluto is going to leave this part of your chart in January of next year, and it will never, ever be back here again. So
stay away.
Yes. Now, Venus retrograde was also exactly opposite your Mercury. And again, your Mercury rules your second house of livelihood, possessions, but also work. You know, this is what you do. So the work was just really, really tied in that day. Mercury also rules your 11th house of community. And that also is a major, major theme, you know, from this event. So your chart was very, very active.
Yeah, I can see that.
But we have some very exciting transits coming up in the future for you. Do you have any questions about what we just went over before we move on?
I don't think I have any questions. I think you answered any that I might have had.
Okay, so let's talk about Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, growth, luck, wisdom, all of the exciting things. And right now, Jupiter is in the sign of Taurus and it's moving through your 10th house. This is a very big transit because it only happens once every 12 years. So from now until May of next year, you have the planet of growth and luck in your 10th house of career, in, you know, your house of public reputation. So this is a really expansive time for your career, support, authority figures, people of influence and power. Like a lot of exciting opportunities can take place personally and professionally. Now, next year on May 8th in particular, there's going to be a new moon in Taurus that's really, really close to your midheaven. And remember, that's the sensitive chart that rules your career. And Jupiter on the same day is going to be exactly on top of your midheaven. And this isn't going to happen again for 12 more years. So I would see this as, usually when Jupiter meets the midheaven, it's like a promotion, a raise, like a brush with fame, like becoming a teacher or a scholar, or like maybe you get a new certification and go to school and, you know, pursue some of this work that you're interested in. But there's a major cosmic like up leveling of your legacy, what you want to leave behind, and feeling spiritually and personally fulfilled with the work you're putting out into the world.
Okay. Yes, I like to hear that for sure. Sounds like perhaps the work I'm putting in now is going to pay off then. So
yes, this is the time to, it takes consistency. You have to keep, you know, believing and doing the work and just trusting, but like big moments are coming next year. And April 21st, so, you know, just a little bit before that new moon, Jupiter and Uranus are going to form a conjunction in the sky. And that doesn't, I think that happens like once every, I don't know, 32 years or something like that. And it will never happen again in your life in this part of your chart. So this is a once in a lifetime transit. So Jupiter expands everything it touches. It's kind of like the hype man of the zodiac. And Uranus is that planet of surprise. But like I said, fame and big opportunities. So I would just see that as like a really exciting seeding moment for, yeah, just some surprise opportunities may show up. You may have a brush with some fame or some people that you've, always admired, or I would just see that as a really expansive time for you.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, especially when it comes to your career. So that's going to be an important time for you to just believe in yourself, reach out and ask for support.
Okay.
You asked, like, when is it going to get better? And I think this is the year. I know it doesn't seem like that right now because of all that you've been through, but this is going to be an exciting year because you just turned 28, right, this year. And you're in an area of your life, they're called perfection years, and it goes by age, and there's like a different house topic. And the 28th year is the fifth house, which is a house of fun. We wanted to say this before we talked about the Saturn return, because this is a good time to have fun, be creative, use protection if you're going to have sexy time, because you have Jupiter there in the fifth house, which is a marker of lots of your fertile myrtle. But it's a time to have fun and like do all of the romantic things that you love to do, channel your inner child, do something creative, because the Saturn return, Stephanie can take it over, is going to be a little challenging. So I think it's going to start to get intense closer to next year. So this is the time to really like take advantage of this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exploring your pleasures, your relationship with sexuality, your creativity, starting new creative projects, those are all topics for this fifth house year. The Saturn return, so Saturn is in your eighth house and it rules your sixth house and your seventh house. So let's unpack that a little bit. The seventh house is the house of one-on-one committed partnerships, marriage, commitments, business contracts, collaborations. And the sixth house is our day-to-day work, responsibilities. But it's like hard work, it's kind of like laboring, right? Like writing a book, right? That's not just like, boom, I did it. It's like you're agonizing for months and all of the things, right? So, and it's your daily routine, your habits, setting boundaries, just getting real about the way that you invest your time and energy on a regular basis. And it is the place of responsibilities. So during your Saturn return, you may pick up some more responsibilities. You may feel more responsible for family members, people in your community or in your life. There can be a feeling of like emotional indebtedness in a way. And you may have to, there can be like a blur of boundaries, especially coming through in the sign of Pisces. So this will be a time, like we mentioned earlier, to really protect and honor your own time and energy, to, take on responsibilities that are meaningful for you, but not at the expense of your light, your sun, your calling, if getting in the way of your purpose. During my Saturn return, I met my now husband. So it's not all bad. I call the Saturn return the cosmic quinceañera. It is like your up leveling, you are, stepping into this new phase of maturity. Karmic things happen. You find your life purpose. You kick old friends out who were superficial connections. And sure, maybe they've been in your life for a long time, but it's not fulfilling. It's not, there's no more alignment there, right? You're removing things and people that aren't in alignment. And whatever is karmically meant for you will be entering your life. So there can be, positives to this period of maturation. It's not all doom and gloom and hard work and responsibility, but Saturn is the Lord of time. And that's why this 2.5 year period, it takes that long to realize the karmic lessons by the end of it, right? It's not just something, once Saturn entered Pisces, you're like, okay, this is what my story is about. It will take time for it to unfold. I have 3 dates for you that your Saturn return will go exact, right? Because Saturn is going to hit once and then it will retrograde and come back again. And then it will go forward one more time. And that will be the last pass. So the first time it goes exact will be April 18th of next year. On April 18th, journal. I don't care if you don't have a journaling practice, journal that day. Pay attention. Who is texting you? What were your dreams? What thoughts came into your mind? What synchronicities are you seeing on your Instagram feed? What intuitive hits do you have? Write everything down, because that is going to this is the first chapter of your Saturn return, and it will offer clues to what will unfold the next 2 times Saturn comes back and hits. The next time it will come back will be September 14th of next year. And then the final pass will be January 12th. And from my Saturn return experience, and I'll let Laura share her experience, but mine was like the first pass, kind of a doozy. I'm not going to lie. Very, challenging, right? Saturn return. The next one wasn't as difficult. It was challenging, but I felt like I had grown and I knew I was able to better equipped to deal with what was unfolding at that time. And the last one was like a cosmic up leveling, right? Like I felt empowered. I felt, just better able to move through and process that energy. Laura, what are your thoughts?
I wasn't self-aware during my Saturn return. So I can look back on it now and say, wow, I broke up with my like long-term boyfriend during that time. And ultimately, I feel like that Saturn return helped me remember my own worth. And I'm also just wondering, like, for this Saturn return for you, because it isn't a financial house, just being more wary around like who you give your money to and how, the 8th house is other people's resources and other people's money. And since you are a tarot reader and you work in like mystical arts, just like really looking into prosperity and abundance mindset, scarcity mindset, and any issues you have around money, because I really do think that's going to be a big theme, and how it's going to maybe change the way you work, since Saturn rules your 6th house and you have Uranus there and Neptune there. And I find people who have Uranus, Neptune conjunctions in Capricorn, you're like meant to break down the status quo of how we make money. To me, this transit is like breaking down capitalism and dreaming up and reimagining how we can receive money. Maybe, and it's you have your Saturn in the sign of Pisces. Like it is the most unity consciousness, like mystical sign, right? And I think this, after the Saturn return, like the last hit, you're going to realize that maybe money is flowing, that money is energy, that money is everywhere, and that you can do what you love to do and receive a lot of money doing it. Period.
Yes. Yes. I also have the Neptune Uranus conjunction in my 6th house, and the 6th house is your day-to-day work, and Neptune is the planet of spirituality. Uranus is also the weirdo. So it's like being different, using your intuition every single day, like that. And like Laura said, transforming your day-to-day life and routine. So you could be working remote more. You could start traveling for work. You could start speaking at conferences. You might start a podcast. Like changing the way that you work every day in some way will be part of your Saturn return. Now, on the bright side, because my Leo rising does like to, find some glimmers. Like Laura said, this is the house of other people's stuff. And it is a place of contracts. So by the end of the Saturn return, I think you could be signing an important contract or deal. You could be receiving resources from an authority figure, or, you know, a big name brand,
An investor,
or something big could be coming your way resource wise by the end of it. Yeah.
Saturn rules your 7th house in partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, if you're looking for like long-term love, I think this is like a good test time, because Saturn rules your 7th house and you have Venus there. And, you know, Saturn's transit through Pisces is 3 years. So I don't know if you're looking for love in a long-term way. I think this could also be a nice little transit.
This was when I got locked down. So, and I have the same setup of my chart. So it definitely could cosmically unfold that way if it's something that feels aligned for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a couple more big transits coming up. Uranus, our favorite, you know, wild card, is going to be right on top of your midheaven. And that's going to take place on June 28th. And this is basically just it'll be the 3-part story. It's going to do the retrograde stuff. But after those 3 hits, it's never going to happen again in your lifetime. So again, usually when people have Uranus midheaven transits, like if you're watching the Oscars or some kind of award show and you're like, oh, who's going to win Best Actress or whatever, you look for the people who have Uranus transits. That was something Anne Ortley, another astrologer, said recently in one of her podcasts. And that's because Uranus is a brush with fame, and it can be. So this could be a very surprising, sudden, and it sets you apart. That was something else she says, is like Uranus is the individual. It's the weirdo. So, and when you think of people who are of the celebrity caliber and, you know, are on TV or having brushes with fame, they're different, right? They're apart from the general population who are at home watching them on their TVs. So this could be a really exciting time for your career. Yeah, to just really grow rapidly, experience sudden events. Now, Uranus usually, I will say, because I went through this transit myself, and it is like twofold, right? Like sometimes at the same time, because that's life, there's duality. So at some moment, you may receive one of your wildest dreams. And at the same time, it could bring massive shifts and changes in your personal life, in your family dynamics, or, you know, you could unexpectedly decide like, my current path is not fulfilling and I'm going in this completely new direction. So I would just definitely be curious. You'll have to keep us posted on what unfolds for you, because next year is just like wild. Now, the book transit that I was talking about is Uranus is going to square your Mercury. And that's going to be on May 13th of next year. Again, Mercury is how you make money. The 11th house is your fans and your community, but it's also support and benefactors. So it's like people of influence who can show up and help you. It's your house of hopes and dreams. So having the hope and the dream of writing a book, having the planet that has to do with books, meeting with Uranus in the sky, this would be a good time if you're not getting approached, you know, with some kind of deal. This would be a very good time to shoot your shot, put yourself out there, start pitching, start writing. You know, leading up to this transit, I would start putting in the work. What you're putting your energy into, that's where the energy continues to flow. So if you want to write a book, start typing away and just let the rest of the astrology kind of unfold.
Okay.
You have your North Node in your 9th house of publishing. The transit North Node that's in the sky right now is transiting your 9th house of publishing, and you're going to have eclipses in your 9th and 3rd houses. So eclipses bring fated endings and beginnings. So this is like, it could be a fated time to write a book, FYI.
Yes.
Like it.
The other biggie that I just wanted to mention was Pluto. Pluto's leaving your sixth house for the rest of your life. Hooray, because we don't like it in the sixth house. But then it's entering your seventh house of one-on-one relationships. And this is also the house of open enemies. So the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was from March 23rd through June 18th. So if you can think back to that time period and what was going on in your romantic relationships, if there were any secret haters or like people that were jealous or competition, or people you thought were your like ride or dies who kind of revealed to be like, oh, it seems like they're not really cheering for me and I'm cheering for them, but what's going on there? Themes of jealousy, control, power in our relationships can come up. So obsession too, right? Like that can be a big one when it comes to the romantic relationships. So those topics can come up. Now, this transit is going to be like 20 years. So it's going to be a long time. It's just going to hang out there for a while. But transformative and karmic people may enter your life during this time, during that gap. And the way that who you're attracted to, your relationship dynamics will be ultimately incredibly transformed by the end of this. Now, this is also a really powerful transit for calling in powerful and influential people, because Pluto is the planet of riches and power. So at the same time, you may be dealing with some haters, you may be dealing with some jealous bullshit in romantic relationships, but you could also be forming these like life-changing business and career contacts as well.
Interesting mixture.
Yeah.
It's such a double-edged sword.
It is.
And once Pluto goes back into Aquarius, it's going to be sextile to your natal Pluto in Sag at 0 degrees. That's just like, I feel like it's like sexual healing kind of thing. I don't know. You could be doing a lot of fun, sexy time rituals.
Yeah, the fifth house is the house of sex, and Pluto is a planet that's often associated with sex. So that's just a really delicious time.
I think that's going to be really fun.
Sex magic. I don't know if you practice sex magic, but that is a delicious time to do it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't need a partner. You could do it yourself.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But you have some really, really expansive opportunities and events on the horizon. So I hope that some of that is, healing and exciting to learn about.
Yeah, it definitely is.
We went through a lot.
I know it's a lot.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to read with you. And can you let our listeners know where can they find you? How can we support you?
Yeah, I am on TikTok and Instagram as Fairy Tarot Goddess. And for support for the fires, my family does have a GoFundMe, or I have my payment apps all linked in my bios, just as ways to support. Yeah, and book a reading. I'm kind of inundated with them right now, which is amazing. I feel so blessed by the overwhelming amount of support I've received from my online community. But so, yeah, if anyone's looking for guidance, I'll add them to my list.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. And as always, if you have any questions about your reading, let us know.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.